The Burning Crusade Classic's latest raid, the Sunwell Plateau, has just passed its first reset, and whilst I'll do a full boss-by-boss breakdown and really measure the difficulty after the second reset, I already want to talk about it a bit more because, well, I may have just been a little bit wrong when it comes to what to expect out of this raid. Before we go on, I want to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, FlexiSpot. FlexiSpot offers a wide range of standing desks, chairs, accessories, and more. Recently, I was approached asking if I wanted to take a look at some of their products on the channel, and to be honest, I've been considering updating some parts of my setup for a little while. I ended up opting for the back support office chair BS8 and the standing desk Pro Series E7 with an ebony top. I think a lot of people go through a phase when they want to start to get a good PC chair and then buy some kind of racing series one instead, and then a few years later realize what they should have actually gotten was a solid office chair that's built for long-term use. The BS8 was straightforward enough to put together and noticeably keeps your form when sitting a lot more straight than what I was doing previously. As for the desk, the Pro Series E7, this is one solid piece of equipment with a fair few bits to it. As for the range of motion, it goes all the way from a comfortable sitting position to easily standing as well. I know personally I spend a lot of time at the PC writing, looking up content for videos, editing and so on, and then in my spare time, wouldn't you know it, I'm often at the PC as well on games or watching streams or whatever it may be. Even if you're busy and needing to get things done, meaning you can't really step away from the PC, standing and switching up your posture is better than just sitting for hours a day every day. Also worth a mention, if you're working from home as self-employed, you already know you can write off these kind of expenses, which doesn't hurt when you think of it as an investment that will last you years. A solid chair and desk should be a standard part of upgrading your setup when the time comes. Improve your own performance instead of just your PCs. Click my link below to check out FlexiSpot's Stand for Love brand sale with up to 38% off. Many thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Let's talk WoW. For once, it wasn't a European guild that won the race to world first on this tier. It was actually a Chinese guild that No, wait, I'm gonna have to stop you there. You're gonna feel so dumb when I tell you this. I think you'll find that SK Gaming won the race back in 2008, so this doesn't count. Well, that's fair, I guess. When Usain Bolt won 3 Olympic golds in a row, I had to go and inform him, sorry, Mr. Bolt, that doesn't count. Thomas Burke won the 100-meter gold in 1896, and you can only do a race once in the entirety of history. So anyways, Chinese guild Old School won the race to world first in the Sunwell with an impressive sub-hour 52-minute run, though a number of guilds were not far behind them. Overall though, I'd be more impressed if most guilds were past the first boss within the space of an hour. You have to remember the guilds in the race are spending hours upon hours on the PTR trying to work out trash skips, perfecting boss tactics and more, and a bunch of them still ended up wiping when it came to the race day. Because, well, as it turns out, the Sunwell isn't easy, but is it the hardest raid ever? At this point it feels like a no-brainer to say, well, yeah, it is, obviously, but pre-nerf tier 5 does hold up. Well, 2 of the bosses do at least. So a while back I did a video on that, the state of pre-nerf tier 5, being SSC and TK of course, as well as looking at the stats after week 1, and the results are pretty interesting actually. So I'm going to show you the number of passes logged compared to the number of kills landed on each of the bosses in pre-nerf tier 5 and the Sunwell after 1 week of progress. The big difference you can see here is in the kill percentage compared to the number of passes that are being logged. Simply put, guilds are wiping in the Sunwell way more than any content we have seen previously, and they're wiping a lot faster too. Now, however, there are 2 big differences between the Sunwell compared to prior raids to keep in mind. This is the first linear raid we have seen in a very, very long time. The last raid where you had to do bosses in the order they were presented was Blackwing Lure, I believe. Yes, really, it was that long ago. On top of that, the Sunwell is also a very short raid. It's only got 6 bosses total, but none of them are freebies that are just going to shower you in loot for showing up. Oh, also the date range here says 2 weeks. That's what it is by default. I kind of forgot to change it, but there's only info for 1 week of data. Even Kalagos, the opening boss of the instance, is taking on average 9 pulls for most guilds to clear. Whilst you look back at the opening bosses of tier 5, your Hydros, Leotheros, Alar, Void Reaver their encounters. Most guilds, even week 1, were getting them down in about 2 to 3 pulls. Here's some numbers to show you how much people are wiping. Kalagos has more wipes logged after 1 week than all of Hydros, the Lurker Below, Leothorus, and Fathomlord. Brutalis has single-handedly caused more wipes than the entirety of Tempest Keep by a very, very large margin. There were about 125,000 wipes in TK week 1. Brutalis has caused a staggering 313,000 wipes. In fact, he narrowly missed out on causing more wipes than SSE as well, which totaled out to about 340k. Still, he's only about 27k behind. That's within about a 10% margin of the wipes caused by an entire instance on a single boss. So if you feel as though your guild is getting thrown into the meat grinder in the Sunwell, yeah, so's everybody else. As for some other average numbers you might be interested in, as mentioned, Kalagos was about 9 pulls for a kill, Brutalis is in the region of 16 pulls before a kill, Felmis comes out at 10 or so pulls before she goes down, Twins are about 15 pulls for most guilds, Muru, aka the literal wall of the instance and by far the hardest encounter, takes on average 48 pulls before he goes down, and Kil'jaeden, while seen as easier overall, is no slouch either, taking some 28 pulls on average. Despite this, the volume of kills that have been landed on end bosses is overall higher than SSE and TK saw week 1. The 2 end bosses were the real standout encounters there, with Kael'thas only seeing 1,365 clears and a 4% kill rate, and Lady Vash seeing 1,659 clears and a 2.7% kill rate, whilst at the moment 5,321 kills have been scored on Muru. That's kills total, not progression kills, by the way, a progress kill being the first kill as part of a majority guild group. So then, what gives? Why is this raid so difficult? Well, I thought not long ago it wasn't going to be quite as hard as it was being made out to be, primarily because raid DPS is so much higher than what it used to be back in 2008. This has been true for every single classic raid we've seen so far. Even when we are given pre-nerf content, all the guilds from speedrun to casual are just doing better damage. And when you do good damage, you begin to skip mechanics, you begin to avoid dangerous crossovers, you don't have that next air phase, you don't have that next ag group spawning. I've done raids from casual to mythic over the years, and more DPS has always been such a huge difference maker on harder fights. And I believe this is also true in the Sunwell, but the more DPS is being offset by another small problem that this raid presents. Holy crap, this place is intense as a healer. No raid has ever needed this level of coordination and focus from your healer team. And on top of that, many guilds who would previously run, say, 6 healers have had to dig deep and try to find 8 or even 9 for some progression fights, because the volume of unavoidable raid damage that goes out on every single encounter is enormous. Arcane Buffet on Kalagos, Meteor Slash on Brutalis, the Aura on Felmis, Flame Touch on Twins, just about everything on Muru, Fire Blossom on Kil'jaeden. No fight is a walk in the park for healers here. There's been some fights where spot healings mattered in the past, and there was even a time when Illidan's damage on tanks looked high. Brutalis might as well be dual wielding Illidan's on both his fists. This guy is an absolute unit and can more or less one-shot a full mitigation geared tier 6 tank if they take a stomp without cooldowns. Oh, and speaking of tanks, they're also having to run as much mitigation as they possibly can because of how hard everything in here hits. And that's because the mobs in the Sunwell pre-nerf have this hidden buff called Sunwell Radiance, which increases chance to hit by 5% and reduces enemies, aka R, chance to dodge by 20%. So basically your tanks have a massive portion of their mitigation removed, meaning they're having to face tanks so much more damage than they have ever had to before, and you're having to make up for that with more healers and just more healing overall. Whilst the DPS are definitely performing better than average back in 2008, pre-nerf Sunwell demands so much more in terms of defensively geared tanks and healing that it's kind of being offset. And that's without going into the fact a lot of the bosses in here have a you more or less wipe instantly if this mechanic goes wrong. Brutalis decides to 2-shot your tank and you don't have any reses up? Yep, that is a wipe. Bad encapsulate positioning on Felmis. Twins decide it'd be fun to conflagrate your tanks for like 3 pulls in a row. Wish I was joking this happened. It's probably not going to end well, but it does make getting the bosses down more satisfying though, and gives more opportunities to read a situation, try and call something out, or to use an ability in a different way, Like for example, you can bubble out of encapsulate, so it's probably not worth throwing wings on during progression, just in the off chance you get hit to avoid that really dangerous ability. Oh, and the gear that drops from these bosses? Yeah, it's a reward that certainly matches the challenge and will make things easier even if you are stuck on the earlier bosses in time. At this point though, I think there will be two major walls that the majority of guilds will experience in this instance. The first one will be Brutalis. This fight requires tank communication. If you aren't giving your healers a 3-2-1 before your taunt, don't be surprised when you die. Also, stop casting for healers isn't really much of a thing on Brutalis either. It's just 6 minutes of pumping as many heals as your mana bar will give you. I think most guilds do have the tools to do the fight, it's just you really need to adapt your guild to how the fight should be played rather than being conservative. The second wall has to be Muru. Basically, there's a lot going on here between the mass dispelling, stacking up the ads, enslaving the demons, and ensuring you do the transition well. You don't want to do it as an ad is about to come up, that's more or less a wipe. This fight also heavily relies on having a strong AoE based raid. With the more locks you can bring tends to be the better. This fight was a test of min-max back in 2008, and in 2022 it's once again proving to be just that. Full raid recap to follow after the second reset of course, but those are just a few things I wanted to share after the week 1 progression of Sunwell. This is progression raiding on a level we haven't seen it before, and I think the stats we have very much reflect that. The only thing I wonder now is, how long do we have of this version of the raid before the nerfs roll in? Anyways, let me know how the Sunwell is treating you and your raid. Hope everything is going well, and as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I shall see you all in the next one very soon.